So I'm Stefan, it's Diego, and we're very pleased to be here to talk to you about our limestone house. And maybe just to start by noting that the house has been built on the land of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. Like all projects, we start with the clients, and in this case, Kate and David came to us with a really passionate brief about sustainability. In fact, David's background as an engineer meant that he came to us saying that he wanted to build a house with passive house and living building challenge principles, which is unusual, and to also explore the idea of prefabrication. So David's engineering background, I think, fueled that fascination with the construction process.
So the site is in Toorak, and it's actually fairly well aligned to get really nice north orientation onto the spaces, and it's on a quiet cul-de-sac. But it's not your typical off-grid site, which living building challenge required, and so to be able to achieve this self-reliability on electricity, the passive house really created this very efficient thermal envelope that was produced in our factory, and also the project was collecting its own rainwater, treating all its black and grey water, which is a really tricky thing to do on a suburban site. But in addition to those things, there was also the need for pretty significant areas of food production and to weave in some ideas about biophilic design into the site.
The key concept of the house really started around the idea of creating a courtyard house, and to then open up the northern edge, kind of eroding that to bring in light and ventilation into the core of the house. The ground floor plan here, you can see that the living and dining space are kind of set further to the back of the site, where it starts to be a little wider, just given the shape of the site, and that allows us, the living and dining spaces, to push into the landscape further. Along the street, the bedroom is kind of shielded from the street, which is facing west, but it does have views into a garden edge through there. And at the centre, the courtyard has a small study space kind of floating within that, and along the southern edge is kind of circulation and entry point. At the upper level, at first floor, there's a series of bedrooms which are set around the courtyard with a layer of circulation and void around the courtyard, as well as terrace and food production spaces as well. You'll notice also that there's kind of a slight curve along the plan to the north, which ties together the two wings of the house, if you like. At basement level, there's a garage, there's also a music studio and a cellar, and also a small kind of plant space for the mechanical plant that's required. One of the key decisions that we needed to make was around materials for the house, and given the Living Building Challenge, it really focuses on local materials and low embodied carbon, and that's something we would like to do anyway, but of course this is a really strict requirement of LBC. And our thoughts did turn to local stone and Mount Gambier limestone, which was used in the Heidi House by McGlashan and Everest. So we talked to the client about that, and the ability to, the softness of the limestone allows it to be cut easily out of the quarry and transported to site with little energy expenditure. And also I guess over time, it develops a patina, which is really interesting, and they were excited by that idea. The patterning of the blockwork, the bonding and the corner detailing became a really interesting way of developing a language for the house as well.
Yeah, so behind this quite precisely laid out limestone layer, there's this high-performing thermal envelope, and which you can see in the diagram on the left. And that was built in a factory in Sunshine at the same time as the slab and other construction aspects were happening on site, with obviously all those great benefits that prefabrication has. And once those modules, some of them two-dimensional, where possible three-dimensional, were completed, they were systematically brought to site and placed on the recently finished concrete slab. The appearance from the street is very much about this limestone skin, and the fact that almost in a sculpting way, the windows on the west, which is where the bedrooms are on both levels, have been sculpted away to create these incisions, which just show enough signs of inhabitation from the street at night particularly, but offer great privacy and sun control. Access is through this oversized steel reveal, which we thought of as a fourth volume along that elevation, and up a stair, half of which is cut away at the rises to allow the landscape eventually to grow through and really integrate the house more into its setting. So whilst really judicious in the placement of openings on the west elevation, as we start to turn the corner, the openings are larger to take advantage of the north orientation and again expresses nice, deep, massy sort of reveals.
Here's a site photo which shows the limestone portion of the house kind of eroding along its northern edge to create that courtyard space, and in the foreground is the dining pavilion, which is clad in a recycled blackbutt. And then within that courtyard space is this small footprint study, which is lined with bookshelves. It has a kind of a feeling of a library within it. It's quite tall and draws light in from above. And you can see on the left side of that slide the prefabrication of that part of the building in the factory, and then being kind of brought to site and craned into position. Thank you. Light coming in from above into that courtyard space is moderated by some adjustable timber louvers, which are adjusted depending on the season.
And so because of Living Building Challenge, there was a very strong focus on local materials. So on the left, those materials that we simply could not get locally, like those for passive house windows or thermal breaks and the like. But generally, the materials are local, so Gambia limestone on the floor, it's a Queensland siltstone, blackbutt, as Stefan mentioned, and then internally a eucalyptus from Tasmania predominates. So very much about two materials as you go into the house, but what's really interesting is that beyond this really calm appearance, there's a lot of technical aspects that are happening below and above the finished layers. So the living room with its large openings into the garden with significant openings, and then divided from the dining room by this small unit, which is a bar on one side, and on the other side it becomes a servery for the dining space, which has this quite amazing timber shroud floating above it. Looking back the other way, and to change the focus, which is generally on the north side, are this view towards these very significant Chinese elms. So there's a very oversized window that really picks up the proportions of the tree. So natural materials generally very much about it being local, being naturally sourced, and also being made by someone. So concrete and rattan screens show evidence of someone's hand.
So the house, as Diego described, is fairly almost inscrutable from the street, but it opens up as you enter and walk inside, and the courtyard brings that dappled light into the centre of the house. The natural materials will over time, we really hope, could change and develop that patina and really bed the house into the landscape of the site as well. Thank you.
Thanks.